welcome back to another video. Welcome back to Azuka Labs. Now, in this video, I will be explaining a very simple topic: the most undervalued tool in AI today. Now, it's not exactly what you think, but let's get into it. Everyone is talking about automation, right? Being able to connect one tool to the next tool and move things around, move data around quite quickly. But very few are talking about this gold mine of voice. Now, let me explain. Let me tell you something. So what actually separates us from the animals? Well, there are a few things. The first thing is that we're able to actually fashion tools. So what does that mean? Well, basically turning stone into a wheel or making fire with flint. So the other thing that actually allows us to do this is our ability to communicate. So being able to actually speak to somebody and articulate your message in a clear and concise manner, right? So what does this actually do? Well, it's important, right? Because we're wired to do speech, right? Before anything else. Before writing, before anything else, before reading, as children, we are wired to actually be able to speak when we want something. It may not necessarily be initially like, may I have the fork, sir? It's more like, wait, I'm crying. I need food right now, right? But this is the way that we're wired to speak or to communicate. And we speak 3 times faster than we type. So what does that mean? It means that you can't communicate and articulate your message faster through typing rather than speech. Speech is the fastest mode of communication that we have to date, until we get telepathy, of course. Now, another thing is that emotions come through voice that don't come through text. If somebody says, I love you via text, you can read that as I love you or I love you, but it's not articulated through the emotion. You can't actually get the emotional response that is required. Now, why is an emotional response required? Because buying something is an emotional choice. When you see something nice, for example, on Valentine's Day, when you buy flowers, you don't necessarily think, oh, wow, these flowers are really nice. It's almost like you know that these flowers are going to make somebody that you care about really happy. And so that's why you buy, right? Similar to when you buy gifts, maybe similar to when you buy an item of clothing. You want to feel a certain way, right? Or even when you buy a service from somebody, you know that the outcome is better than how you feel right now. And that's why you decide to buy. So emotion is important. Closing the deal over the phone is better than closing a deal over email or over text. And this can easily be done if you have the right sales system in place, where you have the right communication platforms in place. Now, what does this actually mean? When a customer picks up the phone and has a conversation, they kind of want to have an experience where they're speaking to somebody lovely and positive rather than a chatbot, right? Chatbots are still important. They're still good for answering simple customer queries. But when we're talking about sales, when we're talking about actually being able to close deals, you want to be able to have an emotional response attached to that. And that's through voice. Okay. Also, what does this do? Well, it also allows us to reach out to a wider audience. So, for example, you might have a senior citizen, they have a nice retirement savings, they have a lot of money in the bank, but they don't really want to speak to you over your website or on a chatbot. They want to be able to get on the phone and actually speak to somebody or have somebody speak to them. So this is what AI agents and AI voice agents do. They allow you to reach a wider audience with deeper pockets in order to get the sale. So teenagers in 1999, they used to do this stuff like, oh, I want these things, etc. But now teenagers are just on their phones, they're just on mobile devices, but they don't really have any money, right? The money is with the old people. And how do the old people want to communicate? Through voice, okay? Now, sales agents are actually designed to sell. So if you don't have sales experience, if you don't have communication experience, how do you think that you're going to be able to make sales, right? Moving on, so if you look at these flags here, I guess you can kind of figure out all of them or what's common between them is that they're not like English-speaking countries primarily, apart from Singapore, of course. But the problem is that like these people have thick accents, right? And no offense to them, but this is a communication barrier, a fundamental communication barrier when it has to do with communicating with people, right? You want to speak the English language in the Queen's English, right? Like I'm not the best English speaker, but you get my point here. So what do these AI agents actually allow you to do? They actually allow you to be able to have an agent that is trained on the Queen's English or trained on American English or trained on Spanish or trained on Portuguese. They can be trained on any specific language. So it doesn't matter where you're from. You can actually sell to any market using these agents because they're actually trained on the way and accents of these particular target markets that you have. So here are your options for actually being able to drive sales through voice. If you're not trained to communicate, if you don't go through if you don't go through a sales training course, then you have two options. You can either buy a speech course, or you can hire a sales rep that will take 10 to 30% of your commission, right? So basically eating out of your profits for hiring a sales rep, right? You might need multiple sales rep. Or the final option, which is to adopt an AI agent that will actually work for you. These AI agents are relatively inexpensive, right? But extremely powerful, right? That is the difference between having a human sales agent and having an AI sales agent. They're actually far superior, in my opinion, to sales agents, right? Because they actually never lose or break character. They never get frustrated. They never get sad. They have emotion programmed into them, right? And this is something that not many people are speaking about. The other thing is that there's also 24/7 support. So if somebody calls you in the middle of the night with an emergency, right, you may be groggy or tired, your staff may be groggy or tired, but an AI agent will always answer with a positive, warm attitude. And that is the difference between making a sale or breaking a sale, not making a sale, right? It is the way that you communicate, it is the way that you actually articulate yourself, right? So I just brought down like some of the different tools and tips that you can use. Now here are some actual applications. So for inbound, right? So inbound meaning somebody calls your business. You can have a receptionist that will book appointment based on the business, like clinics, salons, consultants, etc. They can answer FAQs, they can book calls, and they can filter leads. And for outbound, which is pretty important, they can actually do things like follow-ups. They can do payment reminders, cold outreach with a warm tone. Of course, this is the thing that I mentioned before, the emotional response. And then there's some mini case examples. So for example, the AI receptionist answering calls for dentists, or an AI agent calling a real estate lead, right? These are very important because it's kind of like a numbers game, and you want to be able to articulate yourself in the best way in every single call, right? If you're a human being, after maybe call 20, call 30, call 50, you might want to go for lunch. You might get tired and not want to call again, but the AI agent is still going to be ringing that phone in a beautiful tone, of course. Now, if you want to actually be able to get started and use these agents to your advantage, get above the competition, because this is what makes the difference between a successful business and a failed business, is that they're not able to adapt and find gaps in the market. This is the biggest gap in the market that there is right now. AI voice agents. All you have to do is go to azukalabs.com/quiz, answer 5 questions to start scaling immediately. We have an AI agent that will give you the immediate steps based on your business problems, based on your business industry. The link is in the bio. And for those who are not subscribed, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe for more just like this. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.